So now the thing is, you know what? I've devised a story and I stand at a junction where there are many paths, but I don't know which one to choose.
Okay.
So my questions would be, the first and the former question would be, how does one write a story? But I don't want to know how, you know, the how which relates with the craft of story writing. I don't want to know that. I want to know about the art of writing.
Okay. I believe storytelling cannot be taught. Okay. And I'll have a reason for it. I think any coach, any guide who claims to be a teacher for storytelling and any form of writing, creative writing, knows this. But what he's doing actually, he's actually playing a role of a shrink. Because storytelling is something that you unlock in the person rather than you impart or initiate them into something. Let's just put it in a different perspective, is that how do we define memory? Memory is a record of an incident. So your memory is your narrative that you have stored in your head. And if you look at it, everything that we conceive of us as a being throughout our life is a sequence of memory, which in turn is the narrative that we have told ourselves as who we are, what we did in particular situations, what happened to us, how did we react, why it was justified, and so on and on. So to be honest, we are basically storytellers. Our whole existence depends on stories that we say. And any form of interaction, I keep telling this to the students that, the very first concept or understanding, like there's a notion that, some science has gone into it, that, a child starts forming consciousness at the age of 8 and so on. That is when it starts. The idea that are thrown at him, at the child starts taking it, processes it, stores it in the memory. And that's when the storytelling starts. And it goes on till we end, because every incident is an interpretation in our life, around us. That is how the whole storytelling is, because everything in our life, the whole of our existence is basically a story that we have told us about ourselves, about others, about the world, the government, everything else. It's a story that we have told. Imagine the very first thing is we give the child as a gift his story. Our grandparents sit and tell stories. Every incident, like if you tell the child that, when you were young, this is what you used to do. It's again a storytelling. Now, storytelling has just two parts. There is one teller and one audience. And we, throughout our lives, have been doing this very conveniently, very efficiently, because there are always people who believe in our stories, despite at times when there are proofs against it. You understand? We are basically a very good storyteller, because it's in our DNA. It's the way we know anything about anything. It has gotten down to stories that has been passed on to generations and all that. We talk, think, feel stories as frequently as we breathe. So why do we need a storytelling class? Because of the conditioning, because of the self-doubt that people have started having in them, because people have projected it as if like it's touching the moon. I would say, who taught Aryabhatta math? You know, do we know that Ghalib went to some uh, school to learn Shairi and all that? But what Ghalib has written has become today a curriculum for the others. So my point is, if Aryabhatta, Kalidasa, and Ghalib, and even Shakespeare, I feel the beauty of storytelling is that we are going back to be inventors rather than discovery. You know, if you look at the world's history, there was an era where there were so many inventors. You know, Galileo and Edison and all that. Then it became just today, they are just discoverers. People who are just rehashing what has been invented before in a different perspective to suit today's time and all that. I feel we've lost the ability to believe that we can invent things. And creativity is that the only reason it gives you a high because you can invent something out of nothing. So if you look at the very beginning of everything, it was always inherent, dormant things that people unlocked in themselves and then they practiced it. And what happens with the world is that the Western world prefers documenting everything. The Eastern world, which is Asia and all that, we believe in experiencing everything. The Western world believes in understanding everything. That is the big difference. So they started documenting Shakespeare and all that. But Shakespeare didn't go to Whistling Woods or anywhere. Nor did all the big filmmakers like Salvador Dali and all that went to New York Film Academy or anything. It was there, inherent, as if it was part of their nature. Now, that is where the coach comes in, because that's the job of any person who is conducting a class or anything, or even claiming that he can teach storytelling to someone, that is just trying to understand that other person and helping him overcome his self-doubt that he can actually tell stories. So in my opinion, we don't need to tell someone that this is how you tell a story. We just need to tell someone that you can tell a story. You know, because end of the day, storytelling, like I said, boils down to, there is just one thumb rule, universal rule in storytelling. When you say the audience must be engaged, whether it is books, films, or any form, even in your real life, when you're sharing an experience with another person, if the other person is not engaged or being distracted, you're missing your audience. You're not able to grasp your audience or grab them. So that is why the formula, because I feel the way I educate is that, you know, like when we start cycling, we have these extra tires. It's just there till we learn to balance on our own, and then we don't need those tires. So every formula or anything that comes in StoryTattva that I do is just that extra pair of tires to help you balance till you find your way. So the biggest formula is E is equal to mc square, which is like Einstein's formula, a take on that. E means engagement, and M is motive of a character against conflict, and then I go into the detail about how it goes and all that. But bottom line is that the only rule that counts in storytelling is that when you are saying it, communicating it, whichever form, writing, reading, movies, it has to engage your audience. It will never engage every audience in the world. Your audience, it has to engage, you know. So depending upon who is sitting in front of you, we do this on daily basis. Every story, every experience that we are sharing is a story, whether with others or ourselves. So I feel storytelling, I keep telling with all my students, is that whatever I say is just a guidepost. You have every right to disagree, because if your instinct says it has to be somewhere else, then that is how it has to be. That is what storytelling is, because it is your story that you're sharing. Otherwise, it's just my story that I'm gonna just use you as a proxy to say. So storytelling for me is more about discovering your potential, or believing that you can actually say, over the lifelong conditioning of self-doubt. People, there are big writers, there are big filmmakers, storytellers. I can't be like them. That's because you've never tried. If you try, you probably might be better than them. We write or we indulge in any form of art for our satisfaction or for our experience or exuberance, but it actually becomes anything worthwhile, or it takes shape when there is another aspect to it, which is the audience. If you look at life, everything is in a pair, right? Let's look at this scenario where the infant is just crawling right now and wants to walk. We give a baby crutch to the child. In that case, the child has no option in the head, no conditioning to believe that it can walk without crutch. But before the crutches were invented, before it was commercialized and available on Amazon, in the rural parts of this world, how did they begin to walk? See, some people can do it naturally on their own. Some people need a crutch, but eventually the bottom line is these formulas are just to be used as guidelines, not mandatory way of storytelling or art form. For example, like let's say JJ School of Arts, they might be having a batch of say 20 or so. Every year they're churning artists. How many artists do we know in the world who have come from the schools? Out of those, every batch that is being churned out. So the ones that actually are getting known are the ones who dropped the crutch, who didn't surrender to the existing knowledge and were ready to explore. Because end of the day, every art form is an exploration. So I would say that it's like temporary thing, these formulas and all that. If you get attached to them, then like you said, you're crippled for life.
But again, when we're talking about artists, like you said, Aryabhatta, Shakespeare, do you think they knew the rules, or they worked with a certain set of rules, or is it that later on their way of working became rules?
The one rule that applies, at least in storytelling: engage your audience.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, see, what I also was thinking, for me to explain to in a very simple way is that I like simplicity, and of course, the simplicity should also be with layers, rather than it being complex and layered. But on the contrary, when you go to an online class on writing, and that is why I do go and read about what various people have to say about how to write a story. There are so many things online now. Become a writer in 7 days. But each and every one of them is just telling you the rules. And because I don't get inspired by that,
I'll tell you why. Because they're not trying to churn out writers. They're trying to tell you that, you can make writing your career. Now, from that perspective, yes, you need to. It's efficiency, right? Less effort, more returns. So yes, you need to finish it in 7 days, 9 days, or 1 month and all that. But if that is your objective, yes, by all means should go and do it. Your idea should be that these words, this painting, this sculpture should inspire or should trigger an emotion in an audience. It should make them feel. If it makes them think, then you missed it. The point of art is not to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be straightforward. It can be paradoxical. It can be subjective to opinion, interpretations. But beyond all that, above and beneath all that, it has to be your emotion being able to trigger an emotion in another person. If that it has achieved, that art is good. That is art.
Look, why we are talking is because the story that I have devised, my character is, of course, I have taken my character, or many of his traits are from the real life people that I have known. Now, on the contrary, if I go to somebody or I join a class that you are taking where you are teaching the craft, I'm sure you will tell me to find a flaw in him, to find something in him that will keep him away from his goal.
Okay. Personification is one way humans deal with experiences. Okay. We personify our pets. We personify stone, making them into idols, at least in Hindu culture and all that. We personify cross. I believe we have gone to the extent of personifying moon, plant, insects and everything. It's human nature. So we, as human beings, personify everything. What does that mean? Because end of the day, we are always telling a story of a human being. Even if there was a film called Wall-E, it was about a robot. Will Smith's movie, I, Robot. A lot of pet movies, if you look at it. Those are all characters given to human characters, traits given to this non-humans, pets and inanimate objects. Doctor Strange movie recently, one of the Avengers series, there's a cloak that he wears. They have given a character to it also, because that's how we can conceive things. We see everything as characters, human characters. No, human being cannot be without flaw. Every human being has a flaw. Whether it is discovered or not is a different story. Every human being has a trait and a flaw. So your characters must have a trait. Otherwise it becomes a very flat character, That is why flaws are necessary. Not because it's a rule. The rule got discovered later. If you're engaging your audience, and your particular audience, not the global audience, sees, oh, I love this character and I enjoyed it, then there is nothing wrong in it. In my head, of course, it's not some global concept or something. In my head, we were all born creative, okay? We were not born artists, but we were all born creative because we invented fire out of nothing. Invention is creativity. Discovery is just effort, research. I get impressed by people who can invent something. So for me, invention is creative. So we are all born creative. Then some people acknowledge that calling and indulge in it. They become artists. Okay? And those artists are at a crossroad. The one who is following this Hemingway, Charles Bukowski way, or Einstein way for that matter, is an artist, a creative who's transformed into an artist. The one who is taking the other road is someone we call a professional writer, a professional artist, a professional filmmaker. While I feel that when you have like batches of students and all that, I think anybody who's worth his salt as a mentor or a teacher knows which one of them will go which direction. The goal and the aim of StoryTattva is simple, that support the artist and show them the way. Others might find something better. StoryTattva will just focus on artists. The only reason the professionals currently I'm indulging in is that it's a good challenge to see when you go blank and sit in front of a batch of students and discover them. Because to be honest, I don't think I teach anything. I feel that I am just discovering them as a shrink and then just telling them, okay, this is the area that you have to work on. And some of them find it exhilarating and it seems to help them, but for me, I'm just telling them that this is where you have to look. It was always inside you. What I currently do in association with other institute is a professional training, honing of a skill. Okay. Educating them on craft. I think StoryTattva is purely an education of art. The idea of StoryTattva was just an intrinsic desire to find Aryabhatta, Kalidasa, Shakespeare, Hemingway in today's generation. That's the simplest approach, I think, vision and mission of StoryTattva.
Beautiful.